Hello my friends, today I have a really special video for you because I went to an event last week with Hermes where I got to meet an actual Hermes craftsperson. The idea of the event was that my local boutique invited some of their clients to stop by the store, spend a few minutes chatting to the craftsman, see how a Kelly bag is constructed, and then move on to shopping the latest collection, which you guys know me, of course that's not what I did. I basically stood there, let's call it what it is, interrogating this lovely crafts lady who honestly could have not been any nicer. But I didn't do it for selfish reasons. I wanted to bring you as much valuable information as I possibly can. Information that I can guarantee is going to make you fall even more deeply in love with your beloved Kelly bags, because it was just so mind-blowing to see how these pieces are so carefully and meticulously constructed, which we're going to move on to everything that there is to know about the Kelly bag. So if you'd like to discuss some Hermes trade secrets, which I hope Hermes doesn't mind me sharing, but I mean, even if they do, I guess it's too late now, then make sure to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe down below if you haven't done so yet, and keep on watching. So the first question I had to ask was, of course, how do you become an Hermes craftsperson? Is it something that you go to school for? And what I was told is that you would apply to Hermes as you would apply for any job, that they would call you in to this sort of test where you have to create a product for them. They look at not only the quality of your work, but also how you take on feedback, how are you able to correct mistakes, and of course how talented you are with your hands, after which, if they decide that you're talented enough, you go through an initial training which takes around 18 months, and once you have completed that, you can start working your way up towards creating bags. But most people will start with crafting small leather goods, which was quite interesting to hear. And I actually got to speak to two different crafts ladies who worked for completely different factories in France, because one of the first things that I wanted to share with you when it comes to the Kelly bag, something that was really surprising to me, is that not all Hermes bags actually come from the same factory in France. Obviously, back in the day, there was one workshop in France that produced all the bags that you saw out there, whereas these days there are over 22 different workshops only in France, and there are thousands of craftsmen. Obviously, not all of them create bags. There are several different lines of products that Hermes produces in France. In fact, most of their things that you buy and see in stores are produced in France, which is something that they're really proud of. So there are different workshops that are dedicated to different métiers and different product lines. But even when it comes to bags, not all bags come from the exact same factory. So for example, one of the crafts ladies that I got to speak to specialized in creating Birkins and Kellys in larger sizes and Lindy bags, whereas the other crafts lady that I got to speak to actually specialized in mini Kellys and the Book Cellier bag, which is a bag that we talked about at one point. At this point, it is a discontinued bag, but it was a short-lived but really interesting and really unique design. So it was really interesting to hear that not all Hermes bags are produced in the same factory. In fact, there are several different workshops out there who specialize not only in different designs but also in different sizes, which you would have never thought, especially considering how hard it is to get an Hermes bag. But I mean, thinking about it now, just thinking about the scale and the volume of Hermes's production, it makes sense that they would have different factories specializing in different pieces, different designs, and even in different sizes. So not all Hermes bags are produced in the same factory by the same craftsman, but they are all handmade when it comes to Birkins and Kellys. And I did ask how long it actually takes to create something like a Kelly bag, because there are so many different things that you can find out there. I have even heard that Hermes, some people say that it takes a week for a Kelly bag to be produced. Other people will say that it takes 2 weeks. But what I was told directly by the crafts ladies who create these bags is that it can take anywhere between 12 to 15 hours to produce a Kelly bag, depending on the leather and how finicky it is to work with. And they can make around 2 to 3 bags a week when it comes to Kellys. Now obviously there are different styles of Kelly bags and different sizes, but the biggest difference is that you will see in Kelly bags is the structure. So there are two different structures of Kelly bags, Cellier and return bags. Cellier bags tend to be a lot more structured, and they do come in the full size range. So you can find Cellier bags in size 20, 25, 28, 32, 35, and I think even 40. And then return bags, you won't find a mini Kelly in return, but you will find a return bag between the sizes of 25 all the way to 50 at this point, with the introduction of the Kelly Maxi. And obviously the biggest difference other than the size range is the way these bags look and feel. Cellier bags tend to be a lot more structured, and they have the stitching on the outside, whereas return bags are put together inside out. So when they're working on the bag, they're actually working on the inside, and then the last step of the production is to turn the bag inside out, so you have the exterior facing the outside as it really should, which is one of the most time consuming and most difficult parts of the process, especially when it comes to producing these bags in precious exotic skins. Turning these bags can be a real challenge, and it takes quite a bit of training and experience. And I did ask which bag is more difficult to create, because there is a slight difference when it comes to the price point of Cellier and return bags. And the craftsman said that there really isn't that much of a difference between how time consuming they are and how difficult they are to make. The main difference is that they are different bags and they use different techniques to put them together. So Cellier bags, as we discussed, have the saddle stitching on the outside, which is completely visible, whereas when it comes to return bags, they will use a slightly different type of stitching on the inside. And unlike the Kelly Cellier bag, where the edges of the bag are uncovered, on a returned bag, the edges will actually be covered up by an additional sort of cord, or an additional, let's just call it a piping, which is again completely hand stitched. So it was interesting to hear that there really isn't that much of a difference when it comes to how long it takes to produce one of these bags, or how difficult they are to create. The biggest difference is that the return bag has to be turned inside out, and when it comes to exotic bags, that can be quite a challenge. And I know exactly what you're thinking. Gee, it's insane that it takes 12 to 15 hours to give birth to one of these bags, when it doesn't even take that long to give birth to a human baby, which, I mean, I wouldn't know too much about, but I think that's what you must be thinking, because that was the first thing that came to mind. So why does it take so long to actually produce one of these bags? It's really simple when it comes to Kellys and Birkins. These are bags that are handmade, completely handmade, and actually every single part of the bag is produced by the same craft person, other than cutting the raw material. So cutting the leather is going to be done by someone who specializes in cutting the leather and making sure that you do get the best piece, the best part of the leather for your bag, which is particularly important when it comes to exotic bags. Of course, they have to match up the scales, and they have to make sure that, for example, when it comes to making a return bag that features scales on alligator or lizard bags, there is going to be enough wiggle room for a craftsman to be able to turn the bag inside out. But other than the cutting part, each and every single part of the bag is produced by the same craft person, which is quite unique. Even when it comes to other luxury brands, that's usually not the case. Let me just grab a bag that I have here next to me, which is my raw poly bag. I'm not exactly sure how this is produced, but more often than not, when it comes to a bag like this, each part of the bag will be produced by a different craftsperson. So let's say when it comes to the body of the bag, this is going to be put together by someone who specializes and who's the best at putting the largest part of the bag together. The handles will be done by another person who is incredibly skilled at putting handles together. And then let's say the zip is going to be inserted by a third person, just because they want to make sure that they can bring the best quality to you. So they leave each part of the bag to a person who knows how to do a certain thing best. But when it comes to Hermes, their craftspeople have to be good at everything, because one bag is produced by one person and one person only, which if you have a look inside your bag, on the lining there are going to be several different letters and numbers. So the letters refer to the production year, and then the letters inside are actually, let's just call them the initials, which I'm not exactly sure if those are their actual initials or if that's just a code name that they were given by Hermes, but you can actually tell who your bag was created by. And I have heard rumors that if you send your bag to the spa, your bag will actually go back to the person who originally created it, but that's actually not the case. Craftspeople won't have or wouldn't have the time to deal with sort of refurbishing and fixing bags. Those go to a completely different department. Craftsmen who specialize in giving your bag a facelift. So while that's not true, when it comes to Birkins and Kellys, those are bags that are created by one craftsperson and one craftsperson only, completely by hand. But that's not the case for all Hermes bags. There are Hermes bags that are predominantly machine made, but will feature details that are actually handcrafted. So for example, when it comes to a bag like the G.P.S clutch bag, those are predominantly machine stitched, which doesn't mean that they are mass produced, but the majority of the bag is going to be stitched by machine, unless it's made of exotic skin, because what I was told is that most bags that are made of precious, or also known as exotic skins, will be almost all of them handmade. And speaking of exotic skins, I of course had to ask which leathers are the most difficult to work with, and what I was told, unsurprisingly, is that the most difficult leather to work with is Lise, or also known as shiny croc. I mean, croc in general is difficult to work with, but especially when it comes to Lise croc, the craftsmen have to wear gloves, they have to have some sort of protective filter on the leather, because if they spend too much time working on a certain part of the leather, if they rest their fingers or their hands for too long on one part of the bag, they will leave a mark behind, which they won't be able to get rid of, and they will have to start from scratch, which I cannot even imagine what that must feel like. That must be like, I don't know, having to tear up an original piece of Rothko, especially for someone who prides themselves on being a true craftsman, a true artisan. It must be heartbreaking to have to do that, but that's the price of quality. Sometimes you have to start from scratch, which is perfectly fine. Obviously, when you pay so much money for one of these bags, the quality has to be perfect, and craftsmen do check every step of the way to make sure that every single detail matches the quality standards of not only the brand, but also a true artisan. And it would have been rude of me not to ask which is their favorite leather to work with. So I got to speak to two crafts ladies who were both just incredible. One of them said that her favorite leather to work with is Berinia, not because it's a particularly easy leather to work with, but because of how beautiful it is. And she did say that it is a leather that can be fixed. So yes, Berinia is prone to scratches and marks and even patina, but she did say that if you scratch your Berinia bag, it's something that can be fixed and buffed out quite easily by a craftsman. And then the other crafts lady said that her favorite leather to work with is ostrich, which I wasn't shocked by considering how beautifully ostrich ages, but she did confirm that ostrich is an extremely forgiving leather to work with. It not only ages beautifully, but it also wears really, really nicely. Unlike Lise croc, because when I asked which leather is the most finicky, or which is the leather that they have the toughest time not only working with, but the toughest time fixing, they said that Lise croc is the one that they have the hardest time sort of dealing with in case something was to happen to a bag that's made of Lise croc. If a client sends their Lise croc bag and there is any sort of watermark on it, it is almost impossible to get rid of. They said that they can polish it and they can buff it, but if there is a deep watermark, something that left a mark behind, it's something that is almost impossible to get completely rid of. So if you have a Lise croc piece in your collection, please make sure to never carry it out if there's even the slightest chance of rain. And if you're going to take out your bag, just make sure that there's always a scarf inside your bag that you can gently wrap around it. Even if you go to a crowded restaurant, it's something that you could put over your bag to protect it, or that you have the raincoat that comes with most Hermes bags on you at all times, because if something happens to your Lise croc bag, it's something that you really cannot fix easily. Thankfully, it is a leather that is quite resistant to scratches and marks, and it can always be buffed and polished. But when it comes to any sort of discoloration, and especially liquids leaving a mark behind, it is not something that you really never want to race. I have had the privilege of chatting with Hermes craftsmen before at different Hermes events, and even going to see the Hermes after sales team in New York several times. I got to chat with several different crafts people over the years, but never to this extent, never for this long, and never when they were actually crafting a bag. But I have brought some of my knowledge and some of my experience to you guys before, and I always said that the most time consuming part on a Birkin or a Kelly bag to craft is the handle, which was confirmed. I of course had to double check to make sure that I have the right information, and they did say that it is one of the most time consuming parts on the bag, the handle of a Birkin or a Kelly, because it is not only fully handmade, but it is made up of 7 different layers of leather. Most luxury brands will use some sort of a rope or some sort of a metal piece on the inside of a handle, but Hermes actually uses different layers of leather to construct the handles. And there's also a little piece of padding, which most brands would use plastic for or some sort of a foam, but Hermes uses a different, really soft and squishy type of leather, which was really interesting to not only hear, but also see in person how they were putting a handle together. So they did say that the handle is one of the most time consuming and difficult parts on the bag to produce, as well as just constructing the overall bag, and especially when it comes to a cellier bag, taking the time to completely stitch a bag together by hand. Well, I guess that goes for both the cellier and the return bags, but especially when it comes to cellier bags, the stitching has to be particularly perfect because it's always going to be on show. But I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. I know I had the best time chatting with these incredible crafts ladies, and I definitely have a renewed appreciation for all the pieces that I already own, and even the pieces that I don't personally have or don't personally want to add to my own collection. I will look at through a different lens, I would say. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't done so yet. And please let me know if there's anything else, if there are any secrets that you can share with us in the comment section. I would love to hear from you as always. And I just really appreciate you being here and watching. And I hope to see you back here with a new video really, really soon.